We've all had those days that feel like they drag on forever, right?
Yeah.
Or moments that just fly by.
Definitely. Time perception is a funny thing.
But imagine actually reading ancient accounts where time itself seems to bend.
Yeah, like the biblical stories we're digging into today, Joshua's long day and King Hezekiah's sundial going backward, really wild stuff.
Absolutely. And these stories have, generated so much discussion, especially these persistent rumors about scientific proof.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're tackling. We've got some YouTube clips discussing the miracles, one even mentioning NASA, another giving more of a biblical take.
And a text specifically about that NASA claim, plus an article digging into the theology.
Right. So the mission today is to sort of unpack these stories, really look hard at those scientific claims, and see what our sources actually tell us about, well, faith and science bumping up against each other.
Okay, let's dive in. First up, Joshua's long day, the famous one.
Yeah, Joshua chapter 10, the Israelites are in this huge battle, and Joshua prays for the sun and moon to, stop.
To get more daylight to finish the fight. Right.
Exactly. And the text is pretty specific. It says the sun delayed going down about a full day. It even mentions the book of Deshar.
And it adds that kicker. There has never been a day like it before or since. Really emphasizes how unique it was supposed to be.
Which leads directly into this theory that just won't quit. You see it mentioned in the Incredible Theories video.
Ah, the NASA connection.
The idea that NASA scientists, running orbital calculations on the computers, supposedly found a missing chunk of time.
Like a whole day missing from history.
Almost. The story usually says 23 hours and 20 minutes. And then, supposedly, someone connected it back to Joshua.
Wow. I mean, if that were true, that would be huge. Linking modern space science to an ancient miracle.
It would be huge. It speaks to that desire, I think, to find concrete scientific proof for things we believe deeply.
Bet it's true. What do the other sources say? I sense a but coming.
A big but. Our pasted text source tackles this head on. It calls the NASA story a well-known, basically an urban legend.
An urban legend. Like completely made up.
Pretty much. The source traces it to a guy named Harold Hill back in the 70s. And critically, it says Hill falsely claimed to be connected with NASA.
Okay, so the source of the story wasn't even legit.
Nope. And NASA itself has repeatedly, officially denied ever discovering any kind of missing day. The pasted text makes that very clear.
Right, so no NASA supercomputer confirmation. That whole image is just a story.
Just a story. And beyond just debunking Hill, the pasted text makes another really important point. Scientifically, finding a missing day like that from so long ago, it's just not feasible.
Why not? The calculations.
Yeah, think about it. You need incredibly precise records of time and planetary positions from thousands of years ago. That kind of data just, well, it doesn't exist. It's like trying to perfectly track a leaf in a storm from centuries ago.
Okay, that makes sense. You can't calculate based on data you don't have.
Yeah.
So the NASA angle is dead end.
Seems so.
But what about the biblical account itself? The long day's miracles.
Yeah.
Article looks at other ways people have tried to explain it, right? Like maybe it wasn't literal.
Exactly. It mentions ideas like maybe it was just poetic language describing a great victory, or perhaps heavy cloud cover made the day seem longer, or even a solar eclipse causing unusual lighting.
Plausible natural explanations, maybe.
Possibly, but that source argues they don't quite fit the text. It circles back to that line, never been a day like it before or since, suggesting, the text itself portrays it as something utterly extraordinary, not just weird weather.
So if natural explanations fall short, according to this view, how do they interpret it?
As a miracle, plain and simple. Something outside the normal laws of physics. The source suggests God could have intervened in various ways, maybe bending light, slowing Earth's rotation, something affecting the whole solar system even. The point is divine power over nature.
And the Bible Channel video. They mentioned the NASA story too, didn't they?
Oh, yeah. They were blunt, called it a fantasy, a complete hoax, fake. No mincing words there.
So consensus across the sources that address it. The NASA story is false.
Definitely. And the Bible Channel adds an interesting layer about the book of Joshua mentioned in Joshua. They suggest it might have been a book of poetry.
Poetry. So maybe the description of the sun standing still wasn't meant as literal scientific fact, even in the original context.
That's one interpretation they flew, yeah.
Yeah.
Focusing more on the outcome, the miraculous victory through prayer rather than the precise astronomical mechanics. But even poetically, it's still presented as God acting.
Interesting. Okay, so that's Joshua. Let's pivot to the other big one, King Hezekiah and the sundial.
Right, 2 Kings chapter 20. King Hezekiah is sick, possibly dying, and he asks God for a sign that he'll be healed.
And the sign is pretty spectacular.
It is. The prophet Isaiah offers a sign involving the sundial of Ahaz, a shadow moving backward 10 degrees, something that just shouldn't happen.
And the Incredible Theories video tries to connect this back to the NASA thing, too. How?
Yeah, remember the missing 23 hours and 20 minutes from the Joshua story?
The debunked missing time, yes.
Well, this video claims that the time equivalent of the shadow moving back 10 degrees, supposedly 40 minutes, makes up the difference, bringing the total missing time to exactly 24 hours.
Okay, but wait. If the initial 23 hours and 20 minutes discovery never happened,
then adding another 40 minutes to it doesn't make sense either. The whole foundation crumbles. The pasted text source clearly debunks the core missing day idea.
so that connection is out. How do the other sources understand the backward shadow then? The Long Day's Miracles article.
It frames it, again, as a miracle beyond scientific explanation. The visual would be the sun appearing to move backward in the sky, causing the shadow to reverse.
A global event, or something smaller.
That's a key point they raise. It might have been a local phenomenon. They even cite 2 Chronicles, which mentions envoys coming later to ask about the wonder that was done in the land, suggesting it wasn't necessarily worldwide.
Ah, okay. The Bible Channel video touches on that too, right? Whether everyone would have seen it.
Yes, they also lean towards it being a local sign, primarily for Hezekiah and Isaiah, which, addresses why there aren't Babylonian records of the sun going backward that day.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Did they offer any ideas how it might have happened, even locally?
They threw out some possibilities, very speculative though, like maybe a light source even brighter than the sun appeared briefly. Something like what the Apostle Paul experienced, perhaps.
Whoa.
Yeah, but they stress we don't know the mechanism. The main point for them wasn't the how.
What was the main point then?
Prayer. Just like with Joshua, they emphasized this was God directly answering Hezekiah's desperate prayer for a sign, for healing. It was about faith in God's response.
So, looking at both stories, we see this recurring theme, this tension maybe, between reading these accounts literally, word for word as historical scientific fact, versus, well, other ways.
Exactly, like seeing the Book of Jashar as poetry, or considering Hezekiah's sign as local. It opens up different ways to understand the meaning without necessarily demanding, say, proof of Earth stopping its rotation.
And the Bible Channel really seemed to hone in on the idea that, however it happened, the message is about God's power to intervene when things seem impossible, that prayer matters.
That was definitely a core takeaway from them. The how is secondary to the who and why, God responding to faith.
They also drew an interesting parallel, didn't they, between Hezekiah being promised he'd go to the temple on the 3rd day after his healing.
And the resurrection of Jesus on the 3rd day. They suggested a possible symbolic link, maybe foreshadowing.
It's interesting how these narratives get layered with meaning over time. Now, the Incredible Theories video, even though its NASA claim didn't hold water, did mention something about historical scientists, right?
Yeah, it briefly touched on figures like Kepler and Newton, giants of the scientific revolution, who also held deep religious beliefs.
Wow.
A reminder that faith and science haven't always been seen as totally separate boxes.
Though the video then veered into modern asteroid tracking and revelation, which felt a bit out there.
A little speculative, yeah. But it circles back to the main point from the pasted text source. These biblical stories, they are powerful accounts within a faith tradition, sources of theological reflection. They aren't really things science can currently prove or disprove in the way that debunked NASA story suggested.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. What have we found in this deep dive?
Well, first and foremost, that popular story about NASA finding a missing day that proves Joshua and Hezekiah, it's definitely a myth, an urban legend confirmed false by our sources and NASA itself.
Right. No scientific smoking gun there. And the biblical accounts themselves, as presented in our sources, are generally framed as miracles.
Yeah, events understood as being outside our normal scientific explanations, whether interpreted literally or more symbolically.
And a recurring theme, especially from the Bible Channel, is the focus on the power of prayer and faith in these narratives.
That message comes through strongly, that these stories serve as testaments to belief in divine intervention, regardless of the specific mechanics.
So it leaves us with something to think about, doesn't it? How does knowing the difference between, say, a faith narrative and a scientific finding help us engage with these ancient texts? Even without that NASA-style proof some might look for, what value or meaning can these stories still hold for us today? Thinking about, the human condition, belief, and the possibility of things beyond what we can easily measure.
That's the question, isn't it? How faith and reason interact or don't when we look back at these foundational stories. Definitely something worth pondering.